The Transformation Motivation is a weekly podcast featuring people that have made extraordinary transformations within their health and fitness journey, and maybe even their life. The podcast is an opportunity for real-life transformation stories to discuss their story for others to relate to. Too many times, there are people with these social media transformation stories that have doctored up photos, so we want to highlight real people with real stories people can relate to. We'll get insider strategies, tips, step-by-step of how they did it, and challenges they faced along the way. Now, get ready for the Transformation Motivation Podcast.
Elizabeth, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm fantastic. So glad that you could join today.
Yes, I'm happy to.
Good. So we're gonna find out about this young lady, Elizabeth, who's lost over 100 pounds, which is like a whole person.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to have you, on this live video, as well as part of my Transformation Motivation podcast. Just because I look at Instagram all the time as far as needing inspiration, needing motivation for myself. And I like looking at people's stories. So when a story captivates me and inspires me to like push a little bit harder within my journey, I like to spotlight that story, right?
Yeah.
So so that's the reason why I was like, you know what? First of all, like I want to know so much right now, right? And I'm pretty sure those that are watching, listening, they want to know how you did it, why you did it, like what are some of the driving factors and all that stuff. But before we get into that, let's find out who this beautiful young lady is. All right. So Elizabeth, tell us a little bit about you and your journey.
So I am 22 years old. I'm from Indianapolis. How I got started, I went to school. A lot of you, she has like 200,000 followers, Felicia Fitness Health. We went to school together, and didn't really know her. She was a grade above me, never really talked, weren't friends or anything, but we were Facebook friends. And I saw she was losing weight with Weight Watchers, and I just felt like I could relate to her. And she was posting things like, oh, that's how I feel. And she has now lost 145 pounds, and she just inspired me. And I signed up for Weight Watchers and gave that a shot just like she did. And I lost my first 100 pounds in 7 months from it, and in a very healthy, sustainable way. And
like 100 pounds in 7 months.
Yeah.
That's not a long period of time. That's actually
no
short.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked. I have struggled with mental health issues and binge eating. It got to the point where I was gaining over 50 pounds a year. Wow. From emotional eating. And I used to always watch My 600-Pound Life, and I'm like, oh my gosh, if I keep going at this, I'm going to be them in 5-6 years.
Wow.
And that's obviously not the life anyone, thinks of for themselves. No one wants to get to that point. And I just knew I had to finally make a permanent change, not little fad diets that didn't work. Yeah. I had to fully commit and change my life.
Now, would you say that was some of the mental health issues centered around food? Was that like maybe a coping mechanism or?
Oh yeah, I would eat happy, sad, any emotion. I thought food could cure it. And I used food to celebrate when I'm sad, when I'm happy, anything. And even now I still struggle. I remember when I hit my 100 pounds, I'm like, oh my gosh, where we're going to go out to eat to celebrate. Like, it still is so ingrained in my mind, even though, I've changed. It just is one of those things. It's so hard to overcome.
Yeah, and that's usually a challenge because it's so accepted,
Yeah.
just like when you said, hey, let's celebrate, the first thing that comes to most people's minds are what?
Food.
Let's go eat. Let's go out to eat. And it's not going to eat like a salad with salmon.
No.
So you joined Weight Watchers. You started doing it the healthy way. This was in high school, I take it. This sounds like
no, it was in college. So I've only been on my journey a little over a year. I just hit my year mark less than a month ago. So
Gotcha.
So I started at 21, and so now I'm 22.
Okay. Wow. So being in college, I know there's different temptations and things of that nature. Like, what are some of your biggest challenges that you face in your fat loss journey that maybe other people that are doing it along with you that are in the same place are struggling with too? Like, what are some of your challenges?
Yeah, I mean, I'm never so I'm kind of an old soul. Like, all my friends are like in their 40s. I am not the typical like college person. Like, I graduated high school early because I didn't feel like I belong, and in college I'm online because so I really don't feel like the typical like college student. But obviously I do have friends my own age, and I can't just go out and drink whatever I want and eat the pizza and the cookies and everything else that a normal college person might be able to indulge in. But I also work 2 jobs, and so my main job, I am a assistant in a severe needs special education classroom. So I have 10 students, kindergarten through 2nd grade, with special needs, and that obviously is a very rewarding but a very stressful job, because a lot of them might have aggressive behaviors or need like constant hands-on attention. So I think even though it's a very physical job, like I'm active, after a long day, sometimes you just want to shove everything in your mouth because of everything that happened.
All the pressures of the day is like,
yes,
eat them all. Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. And so how do you deal with that urge, I guess? Because there's a lot of people that are probably coming home from a really stressful day and they're thinking the same thing. Because carbs, sugars have been shown to automatically give you those joyous, happy sensations of like that, like feeling like raises your boosts your serotonin levels, makes everything feel like euphoric. Yeah. So how do you cope with that in working toward your goal? And even like you've lost 100 pounds, so you had to have coped with it some kind of way to reach your... I
think the biggest thing is just you have to replace that emotional eating with healthy coping mechanisms. And I know it's like people that aren't used to working out, when you say, oh, don't eat, go work out, you're like, yeah, right. But until you really get in the routine of replacing those behaviors and getting the most out of a workout, you don't understand how helpful and how much stress can be relieved when you do something other than eat. Because for me, with binge eating, I would feel so guilty, and it would just make my day a million times worse. There was no real relief from eating.
Got you. So how do you encourage other folks to just find something to substitute for the actual eating? Like, okay, maybe go for a long walk or something active.
Yeah, even if you don't want to do something active, like educate yourself, read a book, do something to better yourself and to gain that self-confidence so you don't have to turn to food.
Gotcha. Well, cool. So help us out with you know, what are some of the, give us some of those tactical things that have helped you out in your journey thus far, that you implement or incorporate within your life every single. What are some of your habits? Like, give us your routine, some of the things that you're doing to help you out currently.
Yeah, like for me, I am like a Fitbit queen. I get a lot of steps, and that motivates me to beat my records and, you know, to do that. Throughout the day, my job, I get tons of steps. So that's something that I try to have at least 10,000 in before I go to work. You know, my job makes me so tired. So I know I'm not going to be able to work out after work. I have to do it before. And that's just what works for me. Just replacing, I have found pretty much a healthy way to make anything I used to love. I have a recipe for mozzarella sticks, pizza, you know, I have replacements for ice cream, brownies, you know, just not feeling restricted, because that was always my biggest downfall with past times. Like, I would just over restrict, and then I would just quit and binge, and it was just a cycle. So now I have to find ways to incorporate and be flexible, and while being consistent and disciplined.
Gotcha. And that's, I think, where we were talking about yesterday about the sustainability aspect of it.
Oh, yeah.
Like finding ways to make it sustainable and not so restrictive to where you feel like you're a caged animal, like you can't.
Yeah, and
live life.
sustainability is different for everyone. You know, what might be sustainable for me might not be sustainable for someone else. You know, there's so many different diets, and for some, they might be able to be on them for the rest of their life and have good luck. But I had to find the right fit for me in my own personal balance.
Gotcha. And you made a good point about tracking, only because what I've found in coaching clients around the world is, if you can track it, you can change it. Like, if there's some measure that you can put in place to track it, then we could look at it and say, how could we improve it?
Yeah, like for my program, I track points, not like macros or calories. But it's like dummied down macros basically. But you don't understand what you're truly eating until you track it. Like, I tell all my followers that, like, say, well, I'm doing this, this, and this, but I'm not losing weight. I'm like, you just download MyFitnessPal for a week and you will be amazed. Like, because that deficit is so important. It's the basics to all weight loss. Like, it sounds so simple, but it truly is the foundation for everything.
Totally. I just did a video about that, like maybe about a week ago. And if I had like sound effects, I would have dropped a bomb right there.
Yeah, and we're looking for this big secret, and I wish there was, but there's just not. It's just, everything's out there.
I mean, spoken from a young lady that has tried many things.
Oh yeah.
And
I took some pills and some wraps and tea, you know. I tried.
You've been wrapped in the tea? Money. Have you been wrapped in the tea? You heard about that one too? Like, people taking the tea and wrapping themselves in it?
Oh.
Like, there's so many different things out there. Oh my goodness. So in talking about like daily habits, I mean, that right there, I think we may have touched upon it some yesterday, but daily habits, I actually did like a whole video series on daily habits, because, you know, I tell people, show me your habits and I'll show you, you know, what your progress will look like. Because if your habit is to overeat or not track your foods, I mean, of course, you're going to be that much further away from your goal. But if your habit is to incorporate some activity, you know, eat healthy throughout the day, track and have some measure of tracking for the things that you eat, and maybe even for the activity, you know, you'll be that much closer to your goal. Talk about like habits. What are your daily habits that are like ingrained? Like, what are some of the things that you do that are like set? This is what Elizabeth does.
So I track every single bite of food I eat. Everything. And that is the key for me. I need to have that accountability. And if I go over, I track it still, and I'm just honest with myself. I drink a lot of water. That just really helps me. What else do I do? I base all my meals, Weight Watchers has 0 point food. So I base all my meals around 0 point foods, which is, vegetables, fruit, chicken, turkey, lean proteins. I eat when I'm hungry, not when it's time to eat. And it's crazy how adjusted my times are now when I'm actually thinking about when I'm truly hungry, not just when I'm bored or when the clock says it's time to eat. You have to be mindful.
Cool.
I get a good night of sleep. I go to bed early every night. I'm like an old lady.
I was gonna say, if you're like the old soul that you say you were, I mean, was it like 7, 8 o'clock?
Oh, 8:30 every night.
Oh, that's funny. So, talk about your motivations. What are some things that that motivate you? Do you have like a favorite YouTube channel, a favorite book, album? Like, this is called the Transformation Motivation Podcast. So we're trying to figure out number one, what's your number one motivating factor in general in life? Everything.
I just think my future, like my own future, like he's somewhere around here. My boyfriend and I, we've been together for over 5 years, and he's been so amazing and supportive, and just he's always been active, always been fit, and now I see like a whole different future of us doing things together and not feeling like I'm holding him back. One day being a fit and active mom. I'm super passionate about my job, but my number one thing is I want to be a mom. I want to foster and adopt and do all these things. And I wasn't my best self. And I want to give my future family the best version of me. And I had to make these changes now.
Wow. If I had a bomb I could drop right then, I would totally, like, seriously, your future self, like what you're doing right now is paving the way for your future, your kids, kids to experience a better life. That's awesome.
And it's hard because everyone, everyone in my family is overweight. So obviously I don't blame them at all, but it's someone eventually has to break the cycle, and I wanted to do it, and it's so hard, and now we might have a chance.
I totally commend you for it, because this is like an extraordinary feat what you're doing. So I'm grateful to even be talking to you about breaking the cycle, because like this right here, what you're doing breaks the cycle. It ends right now. You've made a decision, you've taken a step, now it ends. Like, you don't have to worry about your kids being overweight and dealing with self-image issues, because you've walked the walk, you've trotted the course, you know what it takes to get there, and now you could be an example for them. That's awesome. That's great. So let's look at we're going to wrap it up in a couple minutes, but I wanted to just talk to you about what's the best piece of advice that you've received in your journey?
Someone at one of my workshops said, there's always going to be a reason to get off plan and to cheat. And there's always going to be an anniversary, a birthday, a party, a gathering, but you cannot, pick the select most important and stay true to the program.
That's awesome. Now, looking back at the younger Elizabeth, just starting out, if you could go back in the time machine and talk to her, give me what advice would you give the younger version of you in regards to life or, fat loss journey or whatever?
Just that I'll get there eventually. It doesn't need to be overnight. It'll happen. Just stick with it and don't be too hard on yourself. Forgive yourself for the little minor mistakes.
Gotcha. Okay. Wow. That's awesome. Give us, so if anybody wants to like get in contact with you, talk to you a little bit more about your story, your journey, maybe even get some tips, maybe a little help, maybe a little encouragement, guidance, whatever. Where are the best places that they could reach you? And just give us your contact, give us your info so that they can, you know.
I respond to every single DM. I'm stay up on them and I respond to all of them. Just for quick little advice, I have IGTV videos. Like if you go to my profile, you can click on the little bubble. I have some for how I lost 100 pounds, what I eat, my meals. I have an advice one, grocery hauls, things like that, that just to get to know me better. But with any specific questions or just help or guidance, I answer all my DMs.
Awesome. That's great. You hear that, y'all? She answers every single DM. All right. So reach out to her. It's let me make sure I get it right. It's at WW Elizabeth Evolving.
Yep.
Booyah. And that's on Instagram. So if you guys want to reach out to her, inspiring story, you have to check out her photos, and definitely read through, because like I said, when I find an inspiring profile, I like to bring them onto the show because for some reason they lit a fire in me in some way, shape, or form, and inspired me. So I hope this has been a great help for you guys, and please reach out to this beautiful young lady. She's got a great story, inspiring story, and definitely check us out next time. Transformation Motivation Podcast, y'all.